Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Payments Leader Show. I'm your host, Adrian Evans, and today's a bit unusual because the guest I was due to have today has unfortunately got a really key business conversation he needs to have. These things happen. So anyway, very much looking forward to rearranging that because that's going to be a phenomenal conversation with that individual. So as they say, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So I'm embracing it today and just wanted to just do something I haven't done before, which is a solo effort. So bear with me on this one. I haven't done this before. And what I wanted to do today was just talk about your career compass. I think if we were going to go on a long hike, or if we and career is definitely a long hike with many ups and downs to it, we'd need a guide and we'd need a compass. So what I wanted to do today was to share with you how I've gone about managing my career because I believe integrity is really important. And my dad taught me this from a very, very young age, which is do what you say you're going to do and then stick to that and follow through on that. And it's obviously I give advice to people all the time about managing their careers and executives within the payments industry. But what about my own career? Do I take my own advice? And actually, this is quite a good reflective for me, just to make sure that I do and hold myself to those high standards of integrity as well. So, just one piece of advice here. I think if you could, I think it'd be really good if you could get a pen or a pencil and a notebook out. And as we're going through this, just write down. I want this to be an active learning process for you that you do something with. I'll certainly be doing after this. I'll be listening back to this podcast afterwards and just going, okay, so what am I now going to do? And just three things. What did you hear today? So what? In other words, what was that aha or that insight? And then what am I going to do next? Just one small thing. Because ultimately, there's going to be five things that we're going to talk about at least here. So it should be nice and contained. But what that sort of reflective process or self-analysis really helps you take something that's useful and a learning, take it from the past to the present, and then give it an action to the future. So the bare minimum you'll have at the end of this conversation is 5 forward actions that can move your career forward. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is just talk you through the sort of career compass that I use. And we all know there's 4 points, key points to a compass: north, south, east, west. So I'm just going to talk you through each one of those and try and bring that to life in terms of some of the experiences I've had from that perspective. And then the final one, which is really important, which I think is the glue that holds all of this together. So I'll just go through that and just give you the sort of the 4 key points to start with. If we look at north, north is where I say, where are we heading next and next? That's north. South, for me, that needs to be grounded in knowing your own skill set, knowing your own strengths and playing to those, but at the same time, having peer-to-peer conversations. And what's a peer-to-peer conversation? Peer-to-peer conversation is not talking up to somebody, but not talking down to somebody. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail. To the west of this, the western point is about being appropriately rewarded for the value you add. We're going to have plenty of conversations about that one. And then east is actually how do you access the hidden job market? Because the truth is most stellar opportunities are not advertised. They're hidden. They need to be mined. They need to be navigated and they need to be negotiated. And then finally, I'm going to come back to that piece, which I think is the glue that holds all this together. So number one for me, where are you heading next and where are you heading next? Why is this so important? Well, I learned this the hard way. I learned this that I was a very loyal employee. I've been in an organization nearly a decade. And every 2 years, so it was almost like a bell rang for me around about June time, and I'd get a new job. I get a new job, and usually I was good at turning businesses around and fixing them effectively, led by people and customer service was the key thing we did to drive revenue, etc. But I got to a point where the Bell had been nicely doing this for a number of sessions or a number of years and cycles in my career. And then what happened was the bell didn't ring. The bell didn't ring in June, July, August, September. I thought was bound to happen in November, December, because that's when all of the reorganizations happen. Nothing. And it was that stony silence actually that was the worst for me. I was like, I could see all these people getting promoted and around me and peers of mine. I was like, okay, am I missing something here? but nothing. Stonewall. So, okay, so I need to find out what's happening. Then I was given, I think the real big clue was when I was given really, really onerous KPIs, like, oh, you need to KPI even more down, down. I was like, hang about, we've been pretty successful year to date. So then I realized, hang about. And I was on holiday, and I never forget, I met a man at this wonderful hotel, and he said to me one day, he said, him and his wife gave amazing service. It was just a whole experience, a beautiful place. And he said to me, you know, his career had stalled, and he was looking in the mirror one day, and he said, "I know a man who will give you a job." And he was staring at him, and he said, "That man in the mirror, he'll give you a job. He believes in you. He backs you." And ever since then, he formed his own business, etc. Now we don't have to go to all form our own business, but today is about me sharing some of the decisions I've made in my career and how they stood up to that. And I think this whole piece about next and next, next, I suppose when I was a headhunter, one of the things you do when you're a recruiter is you're always looking and you always find the time to be looking forward. Forward in quite a tactical sense, in the sense you're always looking for the next piece of business. But what it does provide a discipline. And I have that discipline to date. And I still operate in that, which is every single day, never mind how busy I am, how many calls I've got, how many engagements I've got. I always find time, at least 20 minutes or half an hour, to stay connected with people, reach out to potential customers. And the thing about that is, if you do that and you do that, you want to get to a point where that becomes like breathing. Because when you do that, that's 2.5 hours a week, bare minimum. Usually for me, it turns into at least 5. Well, it's 52 weeks a year. So that suddenly multiplies. So the bare minimum you're doing per month is you're doing 20 hours of outreach. You're doing 20 hours of outreach every month. You're probably doing 200 plus hours of outreach without it affecting your diary. And it's the real one that hurts me is that when people say to me, I'm too busy my job is so busy I can't do that. Now, I always want people to future proof their careers. And I know, and I've seen the devastating effects, unfortunately, happened to me when I was only 10 years of age, when my dad unfortunately had a stroke and then could not work afterwards. You know, the devastating impact on our lives. And I've seen that happen to too many people. And I take no pleasure from being able to anticipate where that can happen to somebody. But they say, I've got to deliver this, I've got to deliver this. And then a few months later, it's actually now there's a new merger or acquisition, and your role isn't here. So suddenly you've gone from being full in to delivering all of the work, and then you haven't nothing. You've suddenly got all the hours in the week. I don't want that to happen to anybody. Anybody listening to this podcast, I don't want that to happen to you, your family, your children. I know what it's like to be a child who's on the receiving end of that. And a big shout out to my mum here, my late mum, who stepped up, got many jobs, and make sure, as great mums do. I had a great mum. So they step up and make sure that the family stays together, that the family thrives. So looking at next, it's really important to do so. And it doesn't take long to do. You can even do this, particularly on your commute. And again, my favorite thing, you can probably see it here, is my notebook. I'm always, it's my commonplace book. I've always got this to hand, literally. And we can use and find the time. So whether you've got a commute, my commutes became my learning time. They became my time. So before getting into the office, I would find that as Adrian Evans time, Adrian Evans career time. So it means you can plan. And I do that now. So I know where my career is headed next and what the rest of this year looks like. And I know where it's heading next as we go into the following year. But the one that's really helped me is my purpose. So my purpose whilst alive is to positively impact 20,000 careers with the coaching work I do, with the advisory work I do, and the various pieces of intellectual property I've got, from my book, which would be a job magnet, to the podcast show, which we've got, which is the Payments Leaders Show. And that gives me a reason to get up every day. And it also gives me a reason to sleep well at night. So my question for you is, what's your North Star? Where are you headed next and next? So then the South Point. The South Point is about peer-to-peer relationships. And if I could just give a really good example here, I learned this very early on, which is I never see myself as just a recruiter or the teams I worked and ran. I was like, we want a trusted partner status. Yeah, we're not somebody who just provides CVs. Yeah, we provide deep added value to enable organizations to grow their organization, mitigate risk, and drive down transaction cost. And that's not just a simple marketing reframe. And so we always enter those situations and with a peer-to-peer relationship. I'll give you a prime example. It's quite an interesting one, this one. I don't know if you've ever had anything thrown at you during a business meeting, but I did. So let's just say there was a very large global brand in the high-end premium space. And I was there with my team, and he was there with his team. We were in a very nice office in the city of London across a very wide oak paneled table. And I asked this CEO, why does this role exist? He got up, went back to his desk, he picked up a brochure, and he threw it at me, and he threw it across the table. And he said, that's why it exists, because we're too commoditized at the moment and we need to build a brand. And you know how to find the best people in London who can make this happen. Now, I had a couple of choices there. Everybody was looking at me. What's my reaction? Bearing in mind that this was a high profile assignment. And when I got back to the office, my MD would be straight on the phone saying to me, have you won the business? It was the only thing he wanted to know. So first of all, I did was I took a couple of deep breaths. I planted my feet on the ground, took a couple of deep breaths, and I wasn't going to touch that brochure. I wasn't even going to acknowledge it. Okay, I had a job to do, and so I might do slightly differently these days, running my own business. People throwing things at me, but at the time, I was working for a large organisation and I had to win the business, unfortunately. So, but what it taught me was this. It taught me something which was there's a very, very powerful person the other side of me there, but he'd given me the clue. He had a huge business problem that he had no idea how to solve. And his perception was that I was the person and my team were the people who knew the whole of that marketplace in detail. Now, that was pretty good because there were probably some other people in London, but we did know our space and we did know it well. So the great thing was there, he needed to use us, or in his mind, he needed to use us. And we had a very strong track record. We placed a lot of really good people with him as well. And I then had a peer-to-peer conversation with him. What I then did was then talk about his business. I talked about my business where we could add significant value to him. And also then made sure that we got appropriately rewarded for the value we added for completing that assignment. We won that assignment. We delivered everything that they asked us to on that. Yeah, I was able to go back to the office and say that that's what we did. But it was really interesting for me that that could have been pretty intimidating for me. Yet, I suppose I again go back to my mum here. My mum always taught me, one, never be a victim. Two, never talk down to people, but never defer and talk up to people as well. Whoever you are, from pauper to prince, that's what she actually believed. Everybody else in between, or anybody else that is beyond that. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? For me, is when you have an interview, treat it like a business conversation and treat it and just think to yourself, is this person worthy enough to be my line manager? Worthy in the sense of, are they going to enhance your career to get to the place of next and next, next? Because I know for a fact, if you're listening to this, you are probably exceptional at what you do, got a huge amount of skills that you can add. And one of the challenges many people have is more about the mindset of meeting people where they are and solving business problems rather than looking for a job. So if we can head over to the east now, about how do you access the hidden job market? Well, first of all, many people these days, it seems that there's certain people on various social media who think that they discovered accessing the hidden job market and it's a new thing. It's not a new thing. Accessing the hidden job market has existed ever since business has existed. For however many centuries, people have done business together. And what is the truth? The truth is, if anybody who's got a business need and that's where jobs come from. Jobs only come from three things. They come from protecting, cross-selling, upselling revenue, from driving down transaction costs and efficiencies and actually then mitigating risks. If you never mind how complex any job is, the closer you can get to all three of those, the more and more valuable you will be, and the greater impact your role will have on the teams and the organization and the wider company. And that's how to get better paid as well, have a greater impact and be visible, and ultimately, yes, naturally ask for what's appropriate reward. But we'll come back to that one. But accessing the hidden job market is so important. Look, there are great live roles out there, but one, by definition, they're live. You have to have even more competition. And also, you're going to be having to understand and navigate an algorithm first before you can actually do, which is get in front of a person, which is having a peer-to-peer conversation with somebody who's a human who has a real problem and a real business problem. So the first challenge there is how do we make sure that we're even in the game? We're actually talking to people who we can influence and make decisions about. And that's the important thing as well about recruitment is you need to make sure recruitment happens here, human to human, because people employ humans. They don't employ a CV. They don't employ a personality test or personality profiling. So the access in the hidden job market, because the best jobs typically are hidden. So if they're hidden, what it does mean is they need to be mined, they need to be navigated, and they need to actually be evolved. And again, I think for me, I learned this when I was actually in recruitment, which is, again, many other people were very reactive to say in those days, chasing ads and various other things to actually drum up business. I took a more strategic approach, which was, right, who do we want to do business with? What's our ideal customer profile? Let's build a relationship with those people so that when they do have a business needs, which then might be actually a job, we're already in place to actually happen rather than just reacting to the next job. So that made a huge difference. And, sometimes those relationships took a long time to come off. If I look at some, one of the organizations who some of the leading FMCG companies on the planet, leading technology companies, they in some cases took many years. But when I had that relationship, and then when I was able to deliver, you're just waiting for that one chance. So what does this mean? This means you need to be consistently building relationships on a consistent basis. And it's interesting, this was only re-enhanced by somebody where we did actually see a business problem. We've been doing a great bit of recruitment for a technology company that was doing extraordinarily well. But actually, we've seen a gap. We've seen a gap. They said, like every other organization is doing what you're doing. They've got this particular aspect of technology. You don't have that area, but we've got somebody who could head that area up. They said, well, we don't even have a job spec for that at the moment. Like, well, no, this is a possibility. That led after a number of stages of far more business conversations rather than interviews of that person being employed, heading that division up, growing that division. And ultimately, that's somebody who then what I really love about what he did, he took that for the rest of his life. And every other role he then got, he accessed the hidden job market. And just want to say a couple of things are really important. Obviously we've got frameworks, or I've got frameworks on this, but accessing new opportunities like that, there's three things that stand out more than anything else. One, as I've said, clarity. You need clarity on where you're going and what you actually do. Next, what are you doing per day? Is your mindset, or a couple of times a week, focused on your career? So are you open? Are you resourceful? Are you but then the final one is outreach. You have to be proactive. You have to be waiting. You can't be waiting for opportunities. This comes directly from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Every single one of those, the first one starts with being proactive. So then negotiation, the east part of the career compass here. This for me is, and I suppose being in recruitment, one of the great things about that was every day you negotiate. You're either negotiating for candidates, you're negotiating with clients, you are negotiating fees. And effectively, it's important to be appropriately rewarded for the value you add. And there's a number of components to that is put yourself in a situation where you know the value you're actually adding, not just the impact on the role, but the impact on your team, on the wider division and the organization. And the wider you can actually do that, the more and more effective that is. That's likely to happen when you're playing to your strengths, when you realize that what I call um, being rewarded beyond just pure merit, we'll just touch on sponsorship. You do need sponsorship and you do need people advocating for you. Again, this is not a likability competition, but this is about making sure that mutual self-interest is in place. And I've seen that within my career. When I had appropriate sponsors at the right level, my career rocketed. When I didn't, it completely flatlined. I was doing the same job, but that made a huge difference. So how do you be appropriately rewarded for the value you add? I think the best example for me was when I realized that I was running an organization. We turned it around dramatically. The team I had was we became obsessed with over delivering for customers, and then I remember literally in a situation where we tripled the profits of that team and that division over an 18-month period. And then I remember it just going because it was an office move at the time. So there was a huge office, it was just empty. And I walked in there to meet the person who was going to give me my annual pay increase. I had this huge spreadsheet. And looking down there somewhere, there was my name. And, I got 3% pay increase. And I think that the killer was when I was told I should be grateful because I was on the upper end of the bell curve because most people were getting less because of inflation and various other things. Well, it was interesting for me. The only inflation I'd seen of any description was the fact that we tripled the profits of the organization and we'd done so very well and we'd set up a really good business. And I thought, is that fair? And I thought, fairness. Come on, we're in the real world. And I was like, a better question would be, am I being appropriately rewarded for the value I'm adding here? And the answer was obviously not. And then something sort of hit with me. Then my commutes, as I say, became all about how do I manage my career effectively? Because I was really frustrated because each day I was getting people, and you had to negotiate. I was getting great salary increases for candidates, 15%, 20%, some cases, 50%. And I was actually being rewarded 3% for the reward. My income was actually going down at the time. So I think that was the pivotal moment for me. And I thought, I need to get good at negotiating, but I need to get negotiating for myself. And I need to be able to learn to do that. And there's simple ways to do that. We have frameworks called the SMART framework, which is you clearly you need to start with an effective plan. You need to market yourself as premium and add visibility as well as impact. You have a range of options, not just about basic salary, but what does the overall package look like and the overall set of opportunities you're likely to be promoted with? Are you going to get access to the right people? Can you be effectively sponsored? And then R is then reevaluate all of the information from the marketplace, from other offers, from where you potentially are at the moment. And then T, together. Because if you've reached agreement and the verbal part, the written part and the verbal part of your agreement are all matched, well, let's shake hands, let's move forward effectively, and let's do things. So these are all very, very learnable. And just like any cognitive skill, they're all learnable. So there we have it. The north, south, east, and west. North is about knowing which direction you're heading in, where you're heading next, and ultimately what's your purpose. South is about having peer-to-peer relationships and peer-to-peer conversations and communication with people. East is about how do you access the hidden job market and how do you enhance your visibility and your relationships beyond task and beyond transaction, internally and externally. And then negotiation. How do you learn to get more effective at something that's an uncomfortable skill for many? And yeah. And I think one of the interesting things, we had a wonderful conversation recently with Nikki Perfect. Nikki Perfect was a hostage negotiator and headed up all of the training at one point for nationally for the UK, and really would welcome. I go back to that episode regularly because I learned so much from Nikki about how to negotiate in a win-win-win approach. And when we talk about negotiation, I'm talking about leading with multiple wins, not just either win-lose or lose-win. Everybody needs to win because when everybody wins, we've got an opportunity to really take things forward. And just on that negotiation front, it does really make me stop and reflect. One of the things, I think a lot of us underestimate what we actually wake up every day with. that we think is really obvious. And I'll give you an example. When I decided to go into the advisory and coaching arena, I didn't have any clients at the time in that space. And luckily, I'd written my book, which is Be a Job Magnet, which amplified my brand, which amplified my visibility substantially. And I got referred one individual, and he called me and he said, I've been told you can help me. I'm not sure. I've never used a coach before. This was somebody in enterprise sales, really sharp, negotiator themselves. And he said to me, but I'm not sure what you can do for me. So I said, okay, well, I remember driving along near home, and he said to me, I said, well, tell me what the challenge is. He said, well, the challenge is I want to leave my current organization. My frustrations on my line manager and also how much I'm being rewarded for what I do. And I've had 9 first stage interviews and no seconds, and I have no offers. So I said to him at the time, I know what's wrong. I know how to solve that for you. And he said to me, how do you? I said, well, I've done this for 15, 20 years. Just hearing that, I could hone in very, very quickly on what was likely to be wrong. Even just hearing that, with that level of first stage interviews, 9, no seconds. Yeah, we can see where that problem is straight away. Yeah, this is not somebody with a problem for generating opportunities and getting in front of people. This is a conversion problem. So he said to me, let's can we meet? And I said, yep. He said, can you tell me that now? And I said, let's meet. Let's have a conversation. So the very first one, very first assignment, like very, very fondly, we met and we had 3 sessions. But what was great was he committed. He committed. And by the time I got home, he put the money in my bank account. Now, at the time, it wasn't an extraordinary amount of money. It was probably similar to what many other professional services organized professionals earn per hour. Yep. And literally within half an hour, I coached him on how to solve that problem. And within 4 weeks, he'd actually got 3 offers. And it then just started really provoking for me. That just to me was really simple. That was beyond simple for me to do. But that's not the point. And my challenge for you is, what do you find really simple? What do people come to you for? They go, you're the regular go-to person like that, because that's the basis of value. And I love what I do every day. You know? And I love the fact that that enables somebody else to achieve for him and his family the career and what they want to do. So just a question there for you. What is it you're excellent at? And also then, how can you make yourself more visible by sharing that with the rest of the world? But I just want to come back now. What's the glue that holds all this together? So you can imagine a compass, and we've got north, south, east, and west. What's the glue that holds all this together? Well, the glue that holds all this together for me is asking, the ability to ask, ask, ask. I'll give you an example. I realized over a decade ago that actually putting my knowledge down on paper and writing a book would be valuable contribution to others. I also realized it would be good for visibility for myself. And I had no idea how to do this. And I'm partially dyslexic as well, which doesn't help. So I didn't have a clue how to do this. And then I've been reading a number of books by a wonderful man called Jeff Grout. And he'd been formerly the managing director of Robert Harper's recruitment company. He'd actually been Clive Woodward's business manager for a while, and a well established career and leadership coach. Yep. And what I really liked about Jeff as well was the fact that he had made a transition and now had a career out of recruitment, and now as a speaker, one of the best known speakers in Britain, leadership coach. He had the career I want. And be one of my invitations for you is, who's got the career you want? Get hold of them. Find a way of unlocking, because success does leave clues. And I thought, God, wouldn't it be amazing if I could understand from Jeff how to write a book and how to have a career like this? And I thought, why is he going to take my call? Why on earth would he take my call? I don't know him. She's completely cold. We've got no relationship at all. And then I thought, you need to be brave here. You need to be brave. This could be life changing. So I remember typing the email to him, and the email went along the lines of, "Hi, Jeff, you don't know me, um, but I've read a number of your books and admire, and particularly Mind Games, was one of his books that he'd written. Uh, I would like a similar career to the one you've got. I'm at those early stages. I'm sure you can relate when you started. And I just wondered if you had half an hour of your time, Joe, I could just understand some questions that could help me get started a bit more. Really welcome any thoughts you have. Uh, and if not, no problem. And my best wishes, Adrian. Okay. So I was shaking as I typed this because I knew this could be life changing for me. And I sent it. And what was amazing was, I think this either later that day, he'd come back and he said, "Hi, Adrian. Thanks so much indeed. Really glad you like some of the books. Really appreciate it. Look, I'm really super busy. Probably a coffee is going to be difficult to do, but what I could do is give half an hour in the diary. Can you send me the questions before? No breaches of confidentiality." And really, so I was like, wow, this is incredible. So we arranged the time. That half an hour I was very well prepared. I sent him the questions beforehand. There were no surprises. And what it meant was that, I had a start. I had a start. He showed me these are the steps. It's a lot of hard work to write a book. You know, again, as another mentor said to me, the best way to write a book is just stop watching TV for a year. Every time you think about watching TV or streaming or doom scrolling or whatever it may be, write. Yeah, because if you do that an hour a day, well, you're stuck in 365 days, hours of writing. You'll be well on your way to writing the book. But the other thing that really struck me right at the end was he said to me, "Do send me a copy of your book when you've written it." I was like, "Oh, okay then." And he said, "Oh, we haven't just had a nice conversation, have we? You are going to do something with this." And I said, "Yes, yes, yes, I am." And that really left a clue for me because I realized that successful people don't just talk about things like that; they get them done. They get them done. That's how he's written 4, 5, 6 books because you get that done rather than just not talk about it. And I'm glad to say that the very first person when I did get my book, which was over 2 years later, because obviously still had a business to run. And so book writing was on and off at various points, but I still just kept on plugging away. Um, and he was the very first person that I wrote a book and sent a book to, sorry. And I got a very short email back from him. And it just said, "Well done for showing up. Many people talk about it, but you actually done it." And I think that sort of brings us full circle, really, which is about integrity and actually doing what you're saying you're going to do. Again, I think it's a point of difference in this world where, again, I'm very lucky. I was taught this from a very young age by my parents. Let's be careful what you say and commit to, but if you've committed and do it, you have to follow through on it. Yep. And I think it's a real point of difference because the truth is, in the world, if you want a job, if you want anything in this world, any resource in the world, a human or a resource of some substance, even with agentic pay, because let's just have a look at the moment, we're possibly buying cinema tickets or smaller value items via agentic at the moment. But anything of significant resource or reward, a human makes that decision. And if you've got a trusted relationship with that person and they trust, they like and respect you, you are far more likely to be able to have a flow of conversation with them and a rapport and trust. And then transactions can follow of all various descriptions. And you've got a chance to evolve that over a period. So asking, and there's a way to ask, by the way. Yeah. I didn't ask in an arrogant way. I didn't ask in a presumptive way. I didn't ask in an entitled way. No, I was polite. I was precise. I was short in terms of I didn't take much of his time. The request and ask I had. And it's really interesting for me as I interview a lot of very successful people on the podcast channel. And they will, there's only one recently where a CEO said to me, if somebody reaches out to me in a polite, appropriate way, and wants 15 minutes of my time. I can't do a lot of this, but if they've been precise, if I've been clear about what they want to do, I'm probably going to pay it forward. I can't do it all the time because I'm super busy. I'm running multiple businesses. And I think there's a clue there. So my question for you is, it's not something we're necessarily taught, but I think asking appropriately, asking effectively in a mutually beneficial way, there's an energy that comes back and forth there, and it can be the opener to many great careers. So I hope that's been valuable today. And so my questions for you would, how is your career compass? Where are you heading next and next? How are you accessing the hidden job market? And how are you communicating peer to peer? And also, are you negotiating appropriate reward for the value you add? And also, how and whom are you asking? So I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on today's session or today's conversation. Uh, I'm Adrian at adrianevans.co.uk, Adrian at adrianevans.co.uk. Love to hear any other questions that you have, because obviously we sort of skimmed the sort of surface on some of these today. And I wish you well in your career. And I wish you, I believe everybody should have a career that plays to their strengths, gives them direction, is rewarding for them and their family, and contributes to their organization and the industry they're in. So I wish you well. And thanks very much indeed. Take care now. Bye. Goodbye.